Hello, my name is Imaeyen Effiong, and this is my presentation for my 2020 Capstone project. This semester has come with many challenges that I'm proud to say I've overcome. And as you will see in my presentation, my project shifted about 3/4 into the semester, which is why I will be speaking on my process in two parts. I am a first-generation Nigerian immigrant who has had the opportunity to live in both North America and Africa. This being said, I've lived in America for most of my life, have an American accent, and follow American culture. Identity has always been something I've struggled with. Can I consider myself Nigerian when I haven't been raised there all my life? Am I over-romanticizing my family's heritage? These questions led me to the decision to create a documentary around the conversation of cultural dilution, ancestral romanticization, and overall identity in the United States. I wanted to create a visually compelling video that incorporated video, audio, and animation, and conducted my research by looking at those who had already achieved such dynamics. Most of my process at the start consisted of planning. I collected images from those who I would be interviewing and created patterns that I planned on using as elements in the video. I was greatly inspired by the works of Tyler Spangler and Adam Hale while working on these. The video was meant to be projected in a gallery, so to better envision the feeling I wanted to create, I developed a vectored representation of what my space would look like. Since the documentary heavily depended on the words of those I was interviewing, I decided on having a wall of memorable quotes, just again to emphasize the space. I spent a great deal of time on the questions I would ask because I wanted to make sure those I was going to interview had a substantive foundation on which to answer questions. I had a lot of good question, and no one has ever asked me that before during my interviews, so I think I was pretty successful. Storyboarding was one of the more challenging parts of my process because I had to develop a visual concept post-interview. The way my video was going to look completely depended on what my interviewee said, forcing me to relinquish a good amount of control that I was used to having. Initially, my interviewees were meant to come from many walks of life. I wanted a diverse range of ages, races, and socioeconomic statuses. This, however, drastically changed after the emergence of COVID-19, when all I had collected were videos from students, and my hard drive on top of that malfunctioned, so I had lost a large amount of work I completed. The project quickly changed to a branding-focused podcast titled Z Speaks. My mission was now to form conversations around topics related to the future from the perspective of Generation Z. The first episode is titled Defining America as an homage to my original project. I zeroed in on my target audience and began making quick decisions on what the podcast would look and feel like. The structure I decided on included at least one guest and me as the host. Each episode would start with introductions and a question by me about the assumed current state on a topic by the majority of working-class Americans today. We would discuss our personal views, then our projected thoughts on how we would handle this topic once our generation is in the majority of the working class. My initial title was Our America, and this was the cover art I designed for it, or some iterations of it. It wasn't very interesting or telling of my idea so far, so because I was a little stuck in the mindset of creating a serious, hard-hitting piece on cultural identity, that my designs for my podcast were suffering for it. So I went back to the drawing board and solidified my brand. I knew I wanted it to be fun and feel young, so I chose 6 sharp colors and created a dynamic pattern of organic shapes to accompany it. The title now read as Z Speaks, which is much more successful because it gives a better indication of what the podcast is about. I screamed into the air and took some pictures until I liked one enough to use for my cover. I resketched some ideas. This time I approached it by thinking about keywords generation, speak, and America, and how to materialize those words for my cover art. Are shown on the right and my final choice for my cover on the left. As you can see, I still try to pull in elements of my original project, in my iterations, and though I don't dislike it, it definitely didn't fit with the brand. My official cover works much better because of its simplicity. After all my planning was done, I had a holistic view of what my project was going to be. I cut my original individual interviews audio together and recorded myself asking questions and responding to answers to make it sound more conversational. I also made a jingle with the help of my sister for the intro. These are all potential episode covers for the podcast, and the podcast would be hosted on a website which I designed on Adobe XD. As you can see with all of these, again, simple designs. For the ones I use, which you will see in my demo very soon, they focused more on the calm feeling I was going for. Calm, but young and dynamic. While designing the website, I had to look at it from the perspective of a designer and a user. I initially had a white background, which complemented the bold colors.
When you think American, you don't think...
Once I played the podcast, I noticed that it didn't really fit.
For the America they created,
it felt uneasy and inconducive for the tone of the podcast. This led me to change it to this darker green. And that green emulates a sort of theater, making the space a lot more comfortable for listening to a conversation. The website is consistent with the simple nature of the brand and includes all of the information needed for any viewer to understand what it's about. This semester has taught me a lot about tenacity and has encouraged me to continue tackling difficult subjects. I've been so grateful to have had the conversations I've had during this process, and I'm excited to continue having more conversations like this in the future. Thank you.